MIDI keyboards could cost from $70 to $2,500. But do you really need one to make music? So why would you want to get a MIDI keyboard controller in the first place? Anyone who knows a little bit about playing real instruments such as the piano, even the keyboard itself with your MIDI keyboard, or the guitar, or even the drums, knows that when you play an instrument, it sounds supernatural. Not supernatural as in scary, but like very natural and human-like. So when you're playing on a piano, the person that's playing the piano will never, and I mean absolutely never, play it perfectly. Even if they're really, really good at it, they are adding a certain amount of style to the music with their own like personality, the way they like playing, because there is fundamental way to play the piano or the guitar or the drums, but no one is going to hit every single note perfectly on time ever. Right? Everyone's gonna make a mistake, and those small mistakes or those small like inconsistencies made by humans make so that the music sounds really real and kind of relatable, if you want. Ever since the beginning of time, the music that we've heard has all been with real human beings. People were hitting, I don't know, rocks at the beginning to make rhythms. Then people started playing the piano, and then the violins when classical music came. And even in like the 90s, let's say when hip hop came around, people were sampling with DJ sets. And I would argue even today that still like a very human sound, and you don't even know it because everyone thinks that music is all made by computers. True, in a way, we make music with computers. It still doesn't mean that a human touch is not there anymore, right? It's not like the computer just made the music. I would say that most of the songs that you hear nowadays all have that human feeling because of either it was played with a MIDI keyboard or we humanized the way that it sounds onto the computer. So where am I getting with this? MIDI keyboards nowadays help us be more efficient when we're trying to make music, but not necessarily in composing, but making the feeling of the music sound good. Now, do you really need a keyboard to make your music sound human? That's where the question for today's video is going to be answered. My answer is actually no. You do not need a MIDI keyboard to make music or make your music sound human. There are actually many techniques that I use personally when I don't use my own MIDI keyboard. Sometimes I make beats with my keyboard, sometimes I don't, and I just put the notes in the piano roll and compose with just like the computer because I don't feel like playing and I'm not really inspired playing anything like today, for example. So in today's music, you can obviously write your music into the piano roll, but it won't sound human until you try the techniques that I will tell you right now. Actually, let's break down how you can make music without a MIDI keyboard. So what happens when you play the key? You are hitting a note at a certain time and at a certain strength. When you're playing the keys, you're not playing everything at the same time because it's literally impossible, right? Like, we all have inconsistencies. It's impossible to play everything at the same time. So what you want to do if you don't want to get a MIDI keyboard is kind of delay every single note by just a little bit. Make every note a little bit early, a little bit late. And when I say a little bit, it is literally like a small amount just to get that swing in your music. Because if you start moving it really like a lot, then it's going to sound really off time. Now, strength. This is where you're going to go in the velocity section of your piano roll. FL Studio has this, Logic has this, Ableton has this. They all have a velocity feature in the piano roll. So what you want to do is every single note, adjust them to how you would like them being played to have a little more emotion when they're being played by the computer if you want. So for example, if you're composing R&B, most of your chords are going to be a little softer, and some of the notes you're going to put them at a higher velocity sometimes to get a little more emotion, a little more aggressive, and then sometimes slow that aggressiveness. In trap music, often you're going to have chords that are playing very hard, so you're going to have a lot of velocity at a very high and constant rate, but always vary it up because you want it to sound human still. So these are just general rules. R&B is going to be played a little lower, but you still could have variances going up and down in velocity, and then obviously in trap music as well. So that's how you make your music sound a little more inconsistent and like it sounds made by humans. Now, another tip I can give is actually make your chords a little more full when you play them. Add like a root note, sometimes add a fifth note on top to make them sound a little more maybe funky or jazzy if you want. That always adds a little humanness to it. And obviously change the velocity of those. Usually I put the root notes or the bass note if you want to be like a little higher in velocity, just so you hear that root note and everything else is being played kind of like at a similar velocity. You could also try inverting your chords, because there's a lot of inversions happening when people play and compose music, either for the style or actually for just efficiency, because sometimes keyboard players are not able to really like grab that note that's really far out there, so they're just gonna play the note that's like inside the same range of their fingers, right? So to answer the question, do you need a MIDI keyboard? Yes and no. You can make music your entire life without using a MIDI keyboard, but I think that using a MIDI keyboard will help you in understanding how a human plays music, because you can actually see all the velocities played in real time after you play it on your keyboard in the DAW itself, like under. And also you learn how to really play the keyboard as well over time, so then it also helps with being efficient when you're making music. There is literally no right and no wrong, because now you know the information of how to make your music sound more human. So I mean, I know producers that don't know how to play the keyboard and they still do fine, they still do make amazing beats, and I play the keyboard as well. Am I the best at it? Absolutely not. And I make great beats as well. I also don't use the MIDI keyboard all the time, I just use the piano roll, and I still make great beats with it as well. So there's literally no right or wrong. It's like, as long as you make your music sound a little more human. Maybe the drums could be programmed and really synthetic and like create that very strong rhythm if you want, made by a computer, but I would argue that all the synths and layers being played should be made by a human if you want. Like, you shouldn't just slap on all your MIDI notes and like think it's a rap and it's a day, because it'll make your song sound much better in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people will agree with that. You could even try it, test it out to see if you compose something without making it humanized and then making another humanized version after, and compare the two with other people to see which one they like better. And I'm sure it's going to be the humanized version for sure. But that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you guys learned a little bit more about MIDI keyboards. Do you really need them? Yes and no, it depends. It's what you want to do. If you learn a little something, if you want more music production content, please consider subscribing. You can check out my music in the description down below. My music is also down below, so go check it out. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. My name is Tiny, and as always, I'm signing out.